what happens next. And I think that's sort of the sudden. It's much more important what happens the day after the revolution than the day of. And in some ways that is reflective of what happens in therapy too. When someone comes in and we initiate some sort of change process, there's some sort of movement, some sort of understanding, some sort of skill imparted. It's really the most important thing is what happens next. And I think that's sort of the subtext in all this, and even the paper I want to write. I want to think about what happens next, and how do we ensure that what happens next can be somehow a fidelity or somehow connected in the best possible way to what happened the day before.
All right. I like it. It's food for thought. And I don't think we always think that long term necessarily. And maybe we need to. All right, good conversation, Dan. I guess that's it. That's
Boom.
A wrap. We'll see you next time.
Uma Thurman. She's doing that. She's the little girl with the climate change. Uma Thurman.
No, that's
No.
So the transits that are still interesting to us here in 2019 are the ones that are taking place in other solar systems.
okay.
Now, wait a minute. That
Yes.
implies something, right?
Yes, it does.
That implies that there are actually planets around other stars. And in fact, the very way we discovered planets around other stars had to do with the way that the planets were orbiting around those parent stars.
Right.
And so there's a whole new class of planets that we know a lot about now
Yes.
that are called extrasolar planets.
Extrasolar planet.
Extrasolar. Extrasolar means they're not orbiting our sun, they're orbiting another star.
All right.
We now know of over 4,000 extrasolar planets.
Wait a minute. 4,000.
Over 4,000. And by
Over
the way, that
4,000.
number keeps going up, so it's a little bit hard for me to keep track. I think the latest number I saw was 4,084 known confirmed exoplanets or extrasolar planets.
Incredible.
And so by the way, let me throw that shortening in.
Yes.
You'll see the word exoplanet.
Right.
And exoplanet is just because guys like myself got tired of saying extrasolar planet. It was just too many syllables.
Yeah.
So we just cut it down to exoplanet.
Shorten it up. Make it quick. And we're
you go.
moving on. Okay, I got it.
In with the cool crowd. So if you're in with the cool crowd, you'll call them exoplanets. So when you hear the term exoplanet, just think about a planet around a star that's not the sun. It's around another one of those stars that we see up in the sky.
First of all, that's just amazing that we have that technology
Right.
and yeah, it's sort of brilliant scientific thinking to figure this out. I think,
and that's what I'd like to address a little bit. How did we find these things, right?
Yeah.
There's two ways that we found exoplanets, and actually the first way is a little bit more complicated. It's a pretty specialized circumstance.
Okay.
That's when a very big, massive planet is orbiting a fairly small star at a fairly close range.
Right.
When that's happening, scientists can actually detect the star moving in and out relative to the Earth. But really what it's doing, it's kind of going around in a circle. Now, we don't see that other planet, but we can see the star moving in a circle. Well, that implies that there has to be another planet out there tugging it and making it move. The
Okay.
planet does not give off light, so it's not bright enough
that's
for us
right.
to see.
Yes, I remember you saying, "Hey, it's all about light."
Right.
That's how we
Astronomy's
need to see
prejudiced to
things,
things that glow in the dark. So that's why we have to watch those things that glow in the dark, right? So the star itself, though, is glowing nicely, and we can see that star moving around in its own little circle because of a common orbit with a very heavy planet. But to us, what we're measuring is the radial movement in and out. And we do that with this thing called Doppler shifts or red shift, blue shift. And so that's the wavelengths of light being shifted relative to because of the motion of that star. So one of the ways we can figure out that there are planets around other stars is we can just see that we can see that parent star vibrating in and out a little bit, which really means it's going around in tiny circles.
Got it. Yeah.
But there are
Okay,
only
that's
a
cool.
very special few star planet combinations that are just right for us to detect that kind of radial motion.
Well, and it's at such a distance too. And
Exactly.
it's still mind-boggling, and for me anyway, that we can take those tiny little shifts and things, and then extrapolate that's an orbit.
That's right. That's right.
Pretty
Exactly.
cool idea.
But so astronomers came up with then a second way to potentially identify planets that were orbiting other stars.
Okay.
And this still is kind of a Goldilocks situation where everything has to be lined up just right.
Got it.
It's just that it's a more common occurrence, which is something called a transiting exoplanet. So we've talked about transits.
Okay.
Transits in our own solar system or a planet moving in front of the face of a sun. Well, a transiting exoplanet is another solar system out in our galaxy where the planet's planes of orbit are lined up just right to where the planet will pass in front of the face of its parent star.
Okay.
And when it does that, it dims the light from that parent star down a little bit.
Okay.
And then as it moves off the face of its parent star, the light comes back up again. So it's just passing between us. It's not actually touching the star, but
Right.
it's passing in between us and that star. It drops the light coming to Earth down a little bit as it moves in front, and then as it moves out of the way, the light comes back up again. So
Right.
so scientists developed a whole series of cameras that were very sensitive to picking up these slight variations in the light coming from stars due to planets passing in front of them. And they mounted some of those cameras on a couple of spacecraft. The first spacecraft to go into orbit around the Earth that had this technology on it was called Kepler.
Wow.
And so Kepler was a telescope.
Story to tell. Columbus Podcasting can tell your story with a world-class video podcast of professional quality. Viewers and listeners can access podcasts anywhere, anytime. ColumbusPodcasting.com. Give us a call today.
I think too that there's emotion that are connected with music, and it's sort of a feeling that you have connected to, well, not only the music itself, but the event that you're at or the situation.
You see
or
them in
maybe-
concert as opposed to at home. you know,
Right.
with
Right.
headphones on at 2 in the morning. And as a teenager, that was sort of those headphone moments. You would sort of
I remember them. Yes.
All right.
and it sounds a little like if you cross the Beach Boys with a chainsaw.
Oh, okay.
So
that happened.
in Knoxville, Tennessee, in 1990.
Okay.
And I guess I was
There's a memory right
Yeah.
there for you. All right.
I guess I was 19 when I
Okay.
saw them, maybe 20. And so they come into the Knoxville Theater, and the opening band was Nine Inch Nails. And so it was
Yeah.
already a little raucous because the lead singer, Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails, grabbed the guitarist by the hair and started dragging him around the stage. And I was
Oh.
like, we are not in Kansas
We are,
anymore.
we're out there now.
But when the Jesus and Mary chain came on, first off, before they came on, the whole venue filled with smoke. I'm like, what is this? And suddenly I noticed that they were turning all the lights like toward us. And so when they came on, well, first off, before they came on,
You were
they
blinded. You couldn't see.
and suddenly the lights start going in your eyes, so you can't see. You're being disoriented, and somehow the smoke is gone, and they disappeared, and we all just sort of filed numbly out of the theater.
That was it.
What was
Concert
that?
over.
And then I remember, my girlfriend at the time, and she was like, "Oh, God, it was horrible. What was that?" And I thought to myself, that is the greatest
That's
thing
the greatest
I've ever seen. That was literally, it was like, wow, that was
Yeah.
Perfect.
That's yes. Okay.
And you knew she wasn't for you.
And she wasn't.
Yeah. That
We
didn't
were-
last long, did
Because
it?
my wife actually has seen them twice with me, and she's a Mary Chain fan. So that is a there is a point
There
there.
That's a
go,
compatibility factor.
Though I
there.
will
This
say
is not a
they
personality
seem to
thing.
have learned how to play instruments in the
Since
in
then.
time.
Yes.
Or maybe because they're even though the feedback is still there is there
They moved the guitars away from the speakers.
there
so
was.
that,
And when I say feedback, I mean ear piercing, not
yeah.
like this shrill, like a dentist drill.
Thinking, now that you said, remember when you used to do those mixtapes for a girl?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the only time I've ever done one. I remember the mixtape I made for this girl who was in my psychology class,
Okay.
and
And what were you trying to do when you made that tape?
well, I
Not the ultimate goal. I don't mean that.
Impress the girl, probably.
yes,
Yes,
right?
but what were you doing?
that one of those that would be both that may be both seeking and lust subsystems, right? So there are a couple of things, but there is an element of, and the way you described it was for me, my mixtape in some way was an active display, just like
Yes.
male birds
Yes.
have the feathers.
Right.
Exactly.
It was an example.
This is me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My emotional. I remember I put a New Order, "Everything's Gone Green," which is an obscure. It's right after their lead singer killed themselves, and they became New Order. There's this remarkably depressing song. Which, by the way, if you've ever listened to Joy Division, the lead singer killed himself, and I remember they were interviewing one of the guitarists, like, we just didn't see that coming. I thought, you've been playing in the band, listening to this guy for years.
Yeah.
And you missed it all. You never heard it.
Were you listening to what this guy was saying?
No, they didn't listen to the lyrics either. But that's it, and that's what I was going for. When you were creating that tape, you were putting you out there. This is how I'm feeling. This is what
Yeah,
And-
it's sort of almost a resume in that
Yes.
moment for the other person to get to know who you are. Right?
And I didn't ever use the term display, but that's exactly what it was.
Right.
And isn't your list now on Pandora kind of the same way? This is me. This is who I am. This is what I'm feeling.
It should have been private until he pulled it up on the screen. there,
Mike's
so.
list.
Now I'm getting
listening to that.
psychoanalyzed.
There's a lot of Tiny Tim on this. I don't know. I'm not gonna-
Tiptoe through the
that is
tulips
not
with me.
true.
Yes.
I'm not sure what that means.
One-hit wonders are on there. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's a.
So that's the first one that popped up, but there's so many more out there that connects with a place and time.
Listen
in
to the
your
lyrics of that
history.
song. That's a really dirty song. You ever listen to it?
Yes. Yes.
I don't know.
It is
That
really-
is what you quoted earlier. We don't listen to the lyrics, right?
We don't have.
That's
So
all
the
I
music is
listen to
good.
often is the
What?
lyrics. From when I was young, I learned lyrics to songs, and all of a sudden the words would pop in my head, and that's all I, and
They'll come out like in conversation or
Well, too often. Yeah.
But in that's another one of the subsystems that and there is we talk about this in therapy. Like if I'm talking with someone and a lyric comes into my mind, it often helps me to understand what's going on in this moment
yeah.
that I otherwise couldn't know.
Okay.
Like I remember I've used this example 1,000 times, but I was grading papers or tests, whatever, out in front of this was before Davidson Schuster building was built, and I'm doing, and suddenly there are people around me, and the Elvis Costello lyric, there's a song called "This Is Hell," "This is hell, this is hell, hell is heaven in reverse," and why is that song in my head? And then I realized, wait a minute, these people are really annoying me. I really am. All this time I've been exerting all this energy, and people are like, this is hell. You know,
That's where I'm at. All right.
I need to do something about that. One of the lyrics in that is, "My favorite things plays again and again, but it's by Julie Andrews and not by John Coltrane."
There you go.
Yeah. You may not be able to control some of those lyrics that pop in your head. That kind of things. Well, man, this has been cool today to talk about music and hear your own experiences, and we get to share some things about it. What's the final word on music? Is there anything that we can do from a mental health side? Is it comforting? Can I go listen to that song when I'm down, or how do I do?
You should engage as many activities as you can that'll help introduce you to yourself. That'll help you to integrate parts of yourself that can generate that complexity we talk about. You don't have to think about it intellectually. We've talked about music in a way that could preclude the possibility of some folks just enjoying it. It's enough to just do that.
Right,
but,
right.
You know,
without a big purpose. You started out by asking the question, what is the purpose of music? Mm-hmm. So do you have an answer now that we've talked about it?
I like the idea that there's this notion by Schopenhauer, and he said that all great art must be useless. And there's also a lyric by Elvis Costello, what shall we do with all this useless beauty? Well, it needs to be useless because utility is only such a small fraction of what's asked of us in the world. If our job is to dig ditches, then it's certainly important that we dig the ditches we need to. But the rest of life is something else other than that. And I think art, beauty, all of it should be wonderfully useless. So it has utility. That's certainly important.
Okay.
But its utility is in its uselessness, I think. So.
Okay. All right. Rather profound in a way. Yeah. Play with and use all the crayons in the crayon box.
There you go.
I think we talked about. Jeff, good to have you here today,
thank
man.
You.
Thank you for being here. All right. With that, I guess we'll stop there. We'll see you next time.
You have a story to tell. Columbus Podcasting can tell your story with a world-class video podcast of professional quality. Viewers and listeners can access podcasts anywhere, anytime. ColumbusPodcasting.com. Give us a call today.
You did a great job the other day on ad-libbing on the street videos. Dr. Long,
appreciate that.
Dr. Long shot me an email, and the title of the email was Street Videos. And he was, yeah. So I thought, we're in trouble now.
No,
but,
street videos.
But street video.
Can I plug that in there?
As long as I can have street tacos in there somewhere.
You got a plug there? Try it. If it is, you got a plug.
This man. See, this is what I've learned. I've learned that I can't take him anywhere.
All right, there you go.
I've learned that for sure.
He's trying to. He's already sent like 12 Instagrams and 42 tweets out. You know what's up?
Unfortunately,
Go ahead, because you don't want to hear what I gotta say.
unfortunately, Dr. B, you know, we put out tons of great quality work.
All right.
And the thing is, they see it.
Okay.
They might not click on it, but they see it. So, you know, make sure I'm putting it in, you know, an available space for them to see it. So
In their own time, you know, because we understand people come to their, you know, their own lights and understands in their own time and space. So, you know, it'll be out there. You can take your time and go do what you gotta do.
Well, I'm just glad to have you guys in the studio. That's all I.
But Santi is the man, Dr. B. I just want to let y'all know Santi is the man.
Santi, you were talking those street videos, and Dr. Long sent me he liked them, by the way. He really thought it was kind of cool ad lib about it. You guys were just.
I was reading off
You were
the teleprompter.
freestyling. No, you were not. You were out there, man. And
The words were just, you know.
I mean, the word came in. Somebody said the word alien. And then it was like, hey, you alien hunters, you need to have a podcast. I like it.
Grab the attention.
That was very cool, very smooth, and I think that's an example too of just being yourself and being in the moment, and responding with that authenticity we were talking about a moment ago, and having fun at the same time. Now, you can't have fun all the time because that doesn't necessarily make money and move the part A down to part B. But
go back to your last point real quick as far as one thing we've learned, and to what you just pointed on, being yourself. That's one of the main things that we've learned throughout working with everyone we work with, is we had to stay true to who we were regardless of what happened.
Makes sense.
We were put in a lot of different scenarios and situations and places where you're often given a choice. Do you be you, or do you switch it up? And we've, since day one, we've stayed true to ourselves. Comes with the good and the bad, but overall we like
with the bad.
Let's say sometimes it comes with the bad.
Not everybody's going to be a fan, right? I mean, you better.
There are a lot of non-fans.
Right. What he said.
All right, that's what he said. All right, but I'm thinking you're right about that. But that, that's part of life, and sort of moving through those moments. That it's not all about your hurt feelings, or it's not all about some thought you have in your head all the time. You got to kind of move on and get over that, and not be so self-critical, or not have your ego so fragile.
Egos are out there. If you want to be, I don't want to say, you got to, in order to be successful, you got to remove your ego, because there's a lot of successful egotistical people.
Oh yeah.
But
these days and times,
like he said, with these relationships nowadays, with the way the society is if you can just maneuver better, is that me?
Yeah. I think that is.
If you can just maneuver better with people, aka, like you said, sometimes don't always think about yourself. Don't put you in front of everything. Things will work better, because if everyone is thinking about everyone else, then everyone is taken care of. It's that simple. Because if you're just only thinking about yourself and you can't care for another person, like no one else can be cared of than just you.
It's much more important what happens the day after the revolution than the day of. And in some ways that is reflective of what happens in therapy too. When someone comes in and we initiate some sort of change process, there's some sort of movement, some sort of understanding, some sort of skill imparted. It's really the most important thing is what happens next. Right. And I think that's sort of the subtext in all this, and even the paper I want to write. I want to think about what happens next, and how do we ensure that what happens next can be somehow a fidelity or somehow connected in the best possible way to what happened the day before.
All right. I like it. It's food for thought. And I don't think we always think that long term necessarily. And maybe we need to. All right, good conversation, Dan. I guess that's it. That's
Boom.
A wrap. We'll see you next time.
Uma Thurman. She's doing that. She's the little girl with the climate change. Uma Thurman.
No, that's
No. Zizek is ultimately, I think, pushes for a collective action. Part of why he still maintains the label communist is not because there are various communisms, but at the core of all of them, even the ones that went horribly awry, is the idea that somehow we need to be in this together.
Right.
And that universal emancipation is the one point that all subjects should be aimed for. And so if these rules, they may focus on individual emancipation, but they may take us away from a universal emancipatory stance. And so he may have some conflict over that. Like, we have to be careful that we don't allow ourselves to be merely individuals, and that we are not thinking about the universal struggle for all of us to be able to experience a level of life that is really only afforded to people in the first world. So,
Right.
you know.
You have a story to tell. Columbus Podcasting can tell your story with a world-class video podcast of professional quality. Viewers and listeners can access podcasts anywhere, anytime. ColumbusPodcasting.com. Give us a call today.
Let's figure this out.
That's right.
All right, Dan Rose, how are you, sir? What's up?
It's it's Friday.
Well, it's going to be Friday for the rest of the day. I don't know
Hey, well,
how to break
it's-
the news
yeah.
to you on that.
Well, it didn't come soon enough.
Yeah, long week, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's I got if this week were like a disease, I would say it was shingles.
Ooh,
So
that's a rough one right there
Was, yeah.
for some reason. So let's hope that it gets better. It's a short time frame there. All right. So what else is up? How do you deal with a shingles week?
you Colt 45. I mean, like buckets of it. just
Okay.
You know?
Well, if
I'll tell you
if
what.
that's what you got. That's what you
combine
got.
Colt 45 and pork skins, fried pork skins.
Fried pork skins.
I call that a Saturday night.
I hate to say this, but my son's on a keto diet, and for some reason there are pork skins at my house.
On the
I
keto
apologize to the universe, as a matter of fact, for that. But they can't do carbs, but they can do fat.
Pork skins.
They can do fat. It's a crazy.
You know, I
crazy
dated a
world.
girl for a while. It smelled like pork skins.
Oh,
I just felt that was
oh.
really couldn't go anywhere.
Do we need to know that? My
Just
question for that.
people have smells.
Well, yeah, I guess
Yeah.
they do. I hope this session today is not really
Oh, it's
about
nothing to do with smells.
about-
Nothing. It's just heat.
Okay. Well, I'm glad it's Friday too.
It
It's
is.
the end of a long week, and
It is.
hey,
It's been
here
tough.
it is Friday, and you know I think people really do feel better on the Friday going to the weekend. We're all working. We're trying to move toward.
I'm not working.
Yeah, our own time and so forth, and have free time during the weekend. So.
Every moment of my life is free time. I mean, somebody's paying for it, but it's free time for me.
Right. So they have no idea what they're getting for their money,
No, no.
but they're giving you money and you're enjoying it, right? So
That's
there's nothing
how
wrong.
it works.
Yeah, well, that's okay. I'm down for that. But yeah, so what's been on your mind lately?
Well, yeah,
What's
I
kind
thought
of
you-
these things happening?
We got to come up with something to talk with, and I thought about this. Now, in
Okay.
some ways, this is a little. My son would say this is a stale meme in a way. He might criticize, but you know,
Okay.
he's 47. What does he know? I
I think you said on the last show he was 12, I believe. But okay, we'll
maybe
do
he's
the
12.
math later.
He's
I think.
12 going on 47.
Okay,
But
good.
I thought about this because I've been reading this this book by Slovenian philosopher and psychoanalyst Slavoj Žižek.
Yes. Okay.
So when I read, I've occasionally dip into the guy's work, and reading that got me to think about some things.
Sure.
And also, I was at home eating some vegan chili on a bed of brown rice with some Gardein vegan beef tips.
Okay.
We could get some sponsorship out of this, because I ate a lot of
think,
Gardein.
I have no problem with all the sponsors you've mentioned so far.
Good,
we
yeah.
need to talk with those guys.
Except for my Uncle Vinny, who in his meth lab, that was no one.
Yeah, Uncle Vinny is no longer with us. I understand after the explosion.
Yeah, it was an explosive venture. But I'm also, and there was one of them YouTubes come up and talks about the black pill. You know?
Yes. Oh, yes. Now I
the
remember.
black pill.
We had a little bit of text back and forth about that, just a little bit. I was confused because I was thinking, well, we had the red pill, we had the blue pill, and now the black pill.
There's also the white pill. There's a black pill, a white pill. There may be other pills, but and the way to think how this might be relevant and maybe useful to some is that
I don't know if there's a rainbow pill, but go ahead. All
could
right,
be good. That was last week. That's right. If you know that scene in The Matrix,
yes,
where Bob Hope is. I mean, that's
no.
Not
That's not. No, not
well, that didn't happen.
close.
Okay,
Right.
nobody remembers who Bob Hope is.
I'm the only one in the room, and probably listening ever to this. But
okay.
Go ahead.
So there's this idea that in the film, I think it's Neo is the good guy, right?
Right.
So he's being confronted by Orpheus, right? It's Orpheus.
Yes.
Orpheus. And he asks him. He says, "Look, now that you know things, you can take the blue pill and you can go back to sleep, and this never happened. If you take the red pill, you're going to wake up and you're suddenly going to see how things really are. And you have two choices."
Yes.
So he chooses the red pill and he wakes up, and then boom, he sees how things are. Well, a few years back, my son would say longer than a few years back, there was this notion of being red pilled and how you could get woke. And that both the left and the right use this as sort of a way to talk about things. That to be red-pilled is to suddenly be aware of things. It was often talked in the alt-right community and even in some of the incel community about how you suddenly see how things really are, and different forms of woke. On the left, it could mean something different as well. But again, it's just this state of wokeness.
Yes, waking up to a new understanding, new vision of what's really going on behind the scenes, in other words.
Well, there's a wonderful scene in the Žižek film. I think it's in The Pervert's Guide to Ideology, but it may be in The Pervert's Guide to Film, where he replays that scene, and where he's in Neo's place, and he says, "I want a third pill. I don't want either one of these."
Okay.
And
my son's always wanted the third choice. When I'd read in the parenting book to give them either you want to do this or you want to do that, and they always
that's why he's eating pork skins. It's really, he should have from whatever you did back then.
There's a lot of things undoable that happened.
That's
back
right.
then,
So now
we'll see what happens.
He has a diet of pork skin. If he came up with a pork skin diet, I don't know how that would work.
It's somewhere in this keto diet, but don't ask me, and I'm not interested.
Keto.
Thank you.
Keto. Yes. But so that there are. Well, Žižek's point is that there is a way in which we may think that we've been woke, but that's actually an even greater trap. That to think that you suddenly see things clearly may be to be even further embedded and further trapped in things. So a wonderful example that he uses is that in California, they banned straws, and now lots of people are buying metal straws they take with them. They go to restaurants.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
That makes
and so
sense.
this could be an example of being.
We have this
nation
of
there's a lot of plastic in Liza
there.
Minnelli.
Absolutely. I was trying to move through that, but I didn't get very far. Go ahead.
Is she still alive?
Yes.
Okay, Kate. Okay. It's the plastic. So it lasts forever. but the consequence whatsoever.
Right.
Another example that Žižek gives is if you go to Starbucks and you buy a Frappuccino or a Crappuccino, wherever you buy there, and every time you buy one, you give $1 goes to support a third world country, family out of poverty. Okay. And Žižek said, again, nothing wrong with helping, but why would you question? There's a bigger question. Why do we live in a world where there's enough of everything, but there are people starving? So the question would be, you are lulled into thinking you're making a change or a difference, but you're actually just staying asleep enough in the matrix to perpetuate the very thing that has caused all these inequalities.
Okay.
And so
All right.
there is a third pill, or maybe you decide to stay in the matrix and you attempt to be able to understand it from within, maybe even undermine it in a way, or maybe you channel it or direct it in a way that may create larger change. And so that's the whole idea behind, and that was the potential third pill for Zizek. But
Okay.
there's this notion of the black pill. This is the notion that you wake up and that everything is crap, and it's a form of nihilism. It's
Okay.
the idea that when you really see how things are, you say, there's a philosopher, what's his name? I'll think of his name, but
Okay.
he was partly inspiration for the TV series True Detective, the first season.
Okay.
If you ever saw that.
Yeah.
But
great
he is
show.
he's an antinatalist, and an antinatalist is someone who doesn't believe that human beings should reproduce. We should just die out. And he has a nihilist philosophy in which he sort of sees the human race as like a bacteria. We've infected the planet, and at some
Right.
point it'll develop the right sort of antibodies and we'll all be gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is sort of a form of the black pill, sort of like you see things and boom, everything is horrible, and so you have the potential to succumb to nihilism.
Right. Got it.
There's also a white pill, and the white pill would be the ability to, that would be religion, or in fact some evangelical folks call it the white pill, that you suddenly see that wait a minute, there's God, and there is redemption, or there is something better outside of all this and whatnot. And the point of bringing up any of those sorts of pills is that each of them represent a way of being able to dance and deal with reality.
Right.
And all of them may have a shortcoming, or they offer some sort of solution. And they have a parallel, I think, in some of the things you and I have been talking about here in terms of how do people engage with themselves and the world in such a way that, I don't want to use the word happy, because that's a pill in of itself. There's a famous philosopher, Alain Badiou, and he calls it the happiness industrial complex.
Oh, okay.
And that part of what drives, if there were a happiness pill, for instance, it comes in the form of, Zizek talks about this too, of Western Buddhism, that we all need to start buying meditation apps and
Right.
doing yoga, don't do yoga.
Don't do it.
But
No, I got you. Though.
there's a couple of jokes in there. I'm not going to go there.
I know.
But
It's good that you can hit on it and then go back to the topic.
That's because I woke up at 4 this morning. I'm tired. That's the only reason. But
yes.
So the idea that where was that with this thing? Oh, it was the yoga or and all this sort of stuff and meditation, and all those are a form of either the black or the blue or the red pill. They could be the blue pill because they allow you to become better consumers, better cogs in the machine of capitalism, without ever really questioning things. Like, for instance, again, why do we need to meditate more? The things that you feel, the fact that you can't sleep, or the fact that you have you're always anxious, maybe something you need to know as opposed to being numbed from. And the goal would be, how do we engage with ourselves? That would be a wonderful example of that there is an engagement with your own suffering in such a way that may inform you maybe how to change your life, may be able to inform you on how to be able to make the lives of others better. But none of those are the sort of pills that offer a fix that either give you numb you into sleeping or give you a false sense of being awake. And so How does all that sound?
Well, it's really interesting because I the whole idea of being woke and becoming, I don't know if we've defined that very well. I mean, it's being woke to my ideas and you going along with my ideas versus being woke to the general consensus. So some groups will consider you woke and others may not at the same time. So I'm just curious about how we defined being aware. But it's awareness. It's more than what we're aware of now. It's an additional awareness or larger awareness.
Well,
How's that sound?
could yeah, I dig that. Even the term woke is already, in a way, carries with it a certain ideology, a certain politics, and a certain texture that allows you to be maybe closer to something important, but it also may blind you to some things, because if they were to offer a critique even of the notion of being woke, does that mean you're always awake? That you never have to worry about going to sleep again? That means that now you have a hold of a certain truth, and does that mean now that if you're not careful, if you have a hammer, everything is a nail?
Right.
There's a potential trap in there too.
Absolutely. The idea that you've got the best idea or your idea is the way it is for others, and it may not be that way. In fact, it may be, maybe you woke and it's a nightmare.
Well, it's interesting
or,
because
or really not realistic, maybe not.
Well, and Bion talks about this. I talk about that guy sometimes, but also Zizek mentions this in the book that I'm reading right now, and the idea that we don't wake up from a nightmare or a dream because as a way to escape the unpleasant thoughts of the dream. We wake up so we can go to sleep from the truths that the dream are trying to tell us.
Wow.
And so waking up is actually a form of avoiding something, a suffering inherent. Zizek would say a hard kernel that you can't do something with. And that sort of puts that on its head. So even the idea of being woke.
It may, as you mentioned, happiness. It may not make you happy to be woke. As a matter of fact, it may bring more anxiety into your life that you have to have that sleep you're talking about.
Well, it's a wonderful example, and they often talk about the historical texture and the context of all the things that we do, and we often have this view. That there was a thing called the Dark Ages, and people ran around and they were dumb, and they thought the Earth was flat, all this sort of stuff, and then we look back, but you and I are both here in the South, and we look back and say there was a time when we were, we had slavery, but we've passed that. We're now, and so this notion of progress, that we've moved, that there is a place in the past that we can point to as a marker of how much we've grown and how better we are. Folks like Zizek would like to turn that on the head, because depending on how you look at it, there are actually more slaves in the world now than there ever were before. And that to prop up the first world, we have to crush so much of the third. That even as we speak, there are children being worked to death for the elements that go into our phones, or all of these things, the diamonds that we wear, and that for us to be in this place of comfort, to prop up our luck requires that there is an ocean of suffering, and that we are floating on that ocean, and to wake to that would be too much. To think, and as you know, I may have mentioned this, but I'm a vegetarian.
Yes.
I mentioned that before.
Yes.
And I remember the when I suddenly decided to become a vegetarian, I was at this club in Fort Lauderdale, and PETA, not the bread, but the organization,
right?
They had these things going on. They had these videos, and so you had to walk through a gauntlet of these mass farming videos, and and all these sorts of things, and you'd walk through it, you're like, holy cow. And then when I got in, I was like, I can't unsee that. And so that can be a form of being awake. If it became it becomes an ideological trap, and maybe a tad fascistic if it becomes the one thing. And there are so many different flavors of that from elements of Catholicism to elements of ecological awareness, feminism, all these things.
Way. I mean, we thought we believed that now we have something more as we're woke, and but it partitions us off into groups or even an individual, but certainly into a group, and then there's always the opposing group. So you never quite finish this job of being woke. It seems like
it's interesting because again, well, Zizek's sort of a Marxist, and one of the things that a Marxist critique of diversity is that the more we begin to identify with certain tribal groups, the less likely we are to unify in a way that may generate global change. A Marxist equation is that it's class conflict,
right.
That the workers are being crushed by the owners of capital, and so if we fix that, it'd fix everything. But there is this critique that if we stay divided, and this is Zizek, not me, but he talks about how whenever we recognize the suffering of a subset of our population, and I think the most recent would be the transgendered individuals, that we run the risk of not allowing the truth they bring to the table to arrive. Instead, what we do is we find a way to sell them jeans and tennis shoes and make they become just another tribal contingent that we can sell goods to. And the goal is that they become a market share instead of a force for change. So.
No, and it seems like it's economics, but also the politics of things at the time when you're using the market, the Marxist reference, that it is sort of that entire nation was dealing with that, and based on that philosophy or that ideology that had both politics and economics and people's well-being and the differences in class.
I got a lot of class. You've hung on me, right? You'd realize I got class.
Man, do you have class?
I got class.
I said that
Actually, in about an hour, I got class. No, it's funny because we also, you and I would talk once, about there's this guy Jordan Peterson. You're a big fan. You got a tattoo.
Yeah.
And, I'm not going to tell you where. I'm not going to tell anybody where it is, but he can make it dance.
Okay.
And but you got.
Yes, we have talked about
Jordan Peterson.
Yes.
And he represents sort of a response to this in a way. If Zizek's response comes from the left, Peterson's comes from the right, and his idea seems to be that there is and it's at the most conservative thought is the idea that there are some core beliefs, some things that are inherent to Western civilization or civilization in general, and those need to be held on to firmly, and they are often we run the risk of losing them. So for Peterson, it's individuality. It's personal responsibility.
Yep.
And so, as opposed, he would espouse that as the thing that we need and the thing that is missing, and that the further we move away from those sorts of things, from central myths, Christianity and things like that, they all anchor us and tether us, and that he's very skeptical of any notion of progress.
Right.
Because he often, his criticism with Marx, he had a debate with Zizek. It wasn't really much of a debate. I guess it was a debate. But he kept, his thought was that the folks who dare to create change in the way Marx was advocating don't really know what they're thinking. They run the risk of losing something central and important, and then something bad is going to happen. So, Peterson's battle cry is clean your room.
Right. Yeah, he wrote the 12 step of that. I'm sorry, blocking on the title right now, but it's one of his latest books. So the notion is personal responsibility.
Yeah.
Really,
I'm not very good at that.
I was going to say not
really my
that, but
forte.
what I was going to
Not my
say was
forte.
that it's a nice idea to take that personal responsibility and clean up your own room, clean up your own house, make sure your thoughts and your progression, as opposed to progressives in larger sense, but the
But
individual
here's a
progression.
progressive critique of that, though. While you're busy cleaning up your room, you're not noticing all the mess around you. So you literally have taken the potential for the movement of the species, of the potential for things to move forward, and now you're simply focusing on your dirty socks. So
Right.
it could be a form of the blue pill. It could be a way of forget about the possibility of changing things. Forget about the possibility of growing the world in some ways. Just go home and clean your room.
Right.
And so revolution becomes either delayed, minimized, or it's done away with. And
So
but I guess
that-
your room be clean.
Yeah, and not the group think that we were talking about. Okay, so the idea of the black pill bring us.
That's
what?
that's nihilism. Yeah.
So when you say, but isn't that the